stuff is like nerdy straight out of anime, really. It's just funny. I think about this just briefly for a moment, and it's got me thinking about just sort of beliefs I have and how I came about to really find them out, find truth, and develop what I know is probably my best moral compass yet. And, I used to prescribe to things like philosophy, where you'd categorize people under something like utilitarianism or hedonism. Like, pretty sure that's one. Even like solipsism, there's like different isms, and they all sort of contribute something. Um, and like the flaw with these sorts of labels is they do not address essentially everything, and they can't. Like it's literally impossible. I don't know why. Yeah, I'm already in the server. Let's just do. Yeah, I'll do. But it's like it's not hard to figure out some of this stuff. It just feels like sometimes people are not strong enough with their beliefs and it feels quite dystopian in a sense because with like philosophy, it almost sounds robotic and just often doesn't land. Let's see, and sometimes it does, but it's not always that accurate. It's why I've stopped sort of pointing out fallacies. Like I only point them out where it sort of feels necessary, where there is actually an undeniable fallacy, but I won't point out most like just random small ones, like as simple as that. There's no point. It's just pointless and it does nothing. Well, it literally adds nothing to the conversation. So there's no point. And again, like if you're likely pointing out a fallacy to a layperson, someone who's literally just randomly debating you on a topic, that's going to do nothing. Like literally, it's just going to do nothing but annoy the other person. And I'd argue that's not effective at debating anyone. It's not going to change their minds. That's why I sort of dropped that shit. I stopped trying to act like I was an intellectual, as I think most people were, especially like a few years ago. When I first became vegan and stuff, I noticed that in like some of the vegan spaces, a lot of people are acting smarter than they actually are, and the reality is nobody's too smart. You can never be too smart either. And that just sort of led me down this hole of essentially trying to become a nicer person in general, not just in the moral sense, but personally as well. And when I moved house, I really pushed that point home in just being careful with like who I am and what I do. I developed a pretty safe moral compass over the years, one where I value human connection and empathy, obviously, as a result. And it served well for the most part. I honestly can't find many flaws with it. And it goes into sort of topics about how you develop a moral compass to begin with. How do you make it so that you don't sound completely robotic? And really, my first piece of advice with this is just keep being yourself. Like, don't be someone who, again, like prescribes to philosophy or something, or does like higher education. Because these happen to be alienating things, unless you plan to make a job out of it, or a living, or a profession. I could be wrong about this, by the way. There's not really any point in it. Same with learning religion. Like, as much as it's good to learn about religious like, types and stuff and whatever, it's not going to be effective in changing people's minds. And even then, if you do it as a job, I don't know if many people are going to be convinced by it either. Like learning it in that sense isn't always going to be a good thing. Like the least thing like that people need to do is probably read the Bible if it's like Christianity, and anyone could do that. Simple as that. And like, yeah, you don't need a degree in religion to understand that, and even observe behaviours for that matter are commonly associated with religious types anyway. But the point is don't need higher education, so be yourself and essentially try to connect with the world as if you were normally connecting with it. To play games, make friends, and talk to people. Because I think the more disconnected you are from humanity, I think the more likely you're going to mess up any sort of later sort of flaws with that. Where you might have a bad moral compass or even a sense of empathy. That's what I commonly notice as well. It's like why anti-vax is such a huge issue. That still happens today, and it shouldn't be happening. Like it's just horrible, and the amount of like torture and pain and suffering that's caused is unbelievable. It's almost too hard to believe. There's a thing that's actually happened and is still happening. Um, and it does tie into like strong moral compass here because literally the only safe way you're gonna come out of that is finding evidence and being firm in that belief essentially and just caring about people. Just trying not to be harmful in that sense and being open minded, which is a big thing. And that's probably the second point. Being open minded. I just feel like there's so much more that could be done. In that sense, a lot of people who are anti-vax, for example, is like they don't use evidence, and that's always going to be the flaw in that line of argument. And the same way the sort of Hitchens razor works, that which is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. And the reason that exists is because it's a simple line of logic. It's not a fantasy or anything, it's just logic. Where people realise, oh, like this is the same thing. And that's why there's an inconsistency. And that's why people call out inconsistencies. So, it's just being more empathetic and understanding as well as open minded is a big deal than trying to. I don't know, I'll just see. Let's talk. Right across the chasm now. As much as I want to. But also the other thing is like being kind as well. Um, Kindness in itself is only something you should do unconditionally. And it should never be something where you expect something in return. Because if you do that, you become a narcissist and you become extremely selfish. I know this from having lived with someone who had that mentality. And I guess I formerly followed that mentality myself, and that was destructive as fuck. You never want to do that. It is so dangerous. It just ruins lives and it makes people miserable. It's just not worth it. Is there like a third piece of advice I could give? I give like finding some like someone following me in chat. I think. Look, that's weird. Okay, I'm going on the mute list. But yeah, it does feel like that people are like not doing enough research in that sense. But I forgot my third piece of advice. Yeah, developing the moral compass itself. I think it just takes a lot of open-mindedness to begin with, but you also need to acknowledge that being morally right about something is actually subjective, even if it is like really obvious, like with LGBTQ plus rights. It's so obvious that these things are inherent to us. I say us because I'm pansexual, I'm not necessarily biased towards it, but evidently it's something that's completely inherent. You can't change it, you can't treat it. It's just something that you're stuck with. And the same can go for a lot of different sort of sexuality stuff, or not really, but sexual fetishes even. Even like the darker side, like paraphilias. A lot of this understanding can help you alleviate anger as well. So, um, being, I completely forgot what I said. I need to put this shit down. I think. But yeah, like, there's better ways to get a moral compass, and you do it by trying to be as nice as possible. Um, and being outright denying or dismissive of anything that's brought your way is one hell of an easy way to bigotry, and it often leads from that because it is literally bigotry to dismiss something or not understand and then just completely put out some bullshit statement. Yes, yeah, that's literally bigotry. And maybe my understanding is wrong. I don't know, but admitting when you're wrong, I think that's my fourth piece of advice. That's definitely a strong argument. Because if people know that you're going to be honest and open-minded like that, have your mind changed, then I think you're more likely to make friends, and not to mention be viewed quite positively. And I suffer with, I think, imposter syndrome myself. It's hard to sort of feel like I'm doing the right thing a lot of the time, and I need reassurance. But one easy way to do that is just put in like various rules or clauses or whatever you call them to make sure you're always trying to do the right thing. Because one point where people fail is they believe something and they believe it so much that it becomes their life at some point or something like that. And then it just ruins their career, ruins their real life. That matter. It's like it's not healthy to do that sort of thing. And you need to be wary of that. That's sort of a warning sign. Um, I forgot again. I opened a notepad. Um, Usually when I forget, I'll try to backtrack. Um, when you're wrong, changing your mind. But you have to be human in that sense and portray yourself as human to convince more people. Because I think if you sound robotic again, like in the case of like people who study philosophy, you just end up not making any good points and people won't listen. Not to mention there's more effective ways than just learning anything like that. You can literally make short form videos and they're as effective. Just because people are going to pay attention to that. So sort of changing up your method as well can help you develop a moral compass, and that's how I've done mine over the years. I've improved over time. I've tried to even prove myself wrong, which is another piece of advice. Proving yourself wrong is a great form of certainty, for sure. And there's another S-rank. Jesus. Spawning all of them now. Yeah. Certainty only comes when you are open to being wrong. Simple as that. And then putting it right. So I think that's all the advice I've got, to be honest. I feel it's interesting, and yeah, well, it sounds a bit cringy, but I do think this is important so that people just don't fall into these traps. Like I hear sometimes that people think certain things, like for example, a big immigrant problem in the UK, which is not necessarily true. And the reason that's not simply true is because it's more complicated than people make it out to be. Because there's many different factors. One, why is someone coming here illegally, supposedly? why should we care if it's legal or not? That's another question. That'll be the second one. But why are they coming here? Often, not the answer I see is like they want either a better job opportunity or just a better place to live. You know, why the hell else would they abandon their home place, especially if they have family? Why, it makes no sense. There's obviously a problem there, and critical thinking is also important to picking a good moral compass. I think I've listed that in the points just randomly, not intentionally. There's like different factors as well, like if someone wants to move here, like what's the problem? And also, why is it suddenly that people who are of a certain culture or race or ethnicity, why is that a problem for jobs? But the only thing I can list myself personally is like language barriers and cognitive disabilities or hearing impairments do not match. Like these are terrible, just in my experience. So there are places where I don't think people could work. Could be wrong, but personally, I don't really like it. There's so much bigotry around that sort of thing, um, and while people can essentially make a good point in one sense, they're not making good points in the other, which happens to be immigration stuff. So it's dangerous, and that's why we need a good moral compass. It's usually a no-brainer. Like a lot of people, it's not even hard to develop. You just talk to people, you do research, and you understand. Some of it doesn't even take 10 minutes. So yeah, thanks for listening. See everyone another time.